Today's episode is all about Bryan Adams' 1998 album On a Day Like Today, which ended his chart success in the US, only got to 103 in the US charts, but I think it's a more cohesive album than his last two efforts. This video actually started out as a possible listen to You Want It, You Got It by Bryan Adams, his second album from 1981. A few nights ago I thought I'd reacquaint myself with this album, listen to it on vinyl, listen to it on CD the day after, and then I thought I'd go and reach for his 90s albums, the two that come after Waking Up the Neighbours, so I went and listened to 18 Till I Die, and the album that we're going to talk about mostly today, On a Day Like Today. I enjoy the post-Waking Up the Neighbours stuff, those two albums, but although 18 Till I Die is good, there are some definite filler tracks on this, and although I hadn't realised it really in the past, this is actually a very solid album with no filler on it really. I enjoy everything that's on here, whereas the two albums before it, this one is very up and down, 18 Till I Die. There's some really good stuff on here. The Only Thing That Looks Good on Me Is You, Let's Make a Night to Remember, Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman? Those are the three star tracks I would say on this, and I'll Always Be Right There is a really good ballad as well. But this finds Bryan Adams trying to go between real rock songs and ballads, and the record feels a little bit unstable because of that. And of course that was the follow-up to this behemoth album that did really well, Waking Up the Neighbours. Had a lot of singles on this, and to be fair, I don't know the overall album all that well. Before I listened to it, which wasn't all that long ago as an overall album, I knew about 50% of this from greatest hits albums, etc. But I found that the rest of what I've listened to on here that I didn't know before, I'm not really that keen on, but there is time to be had with this because I haven't listened to this all that much. So my opinion might well change on Waking Up the Neighbours, but the fact remains that this is a very long album. I think it's something like an hour and 15. 18 Till I Die is around about 51 minutes, and On a Day Like Today is nearly an hour long, believe it or not. Unfortunately, we've got the CD era now of the 90s where everything is getting longer and longer. But this doesn't outstay its welcome, I don't think. It's a long album at nearly an hour long, but it certainly doesn't outstay its welcome. I talked earlier about how this was pretty much the end of Bryan Adams' success in the US, and it only got to 103 in the US charts, but it was moderately successful in his home country of Canada. Got to number 3 there. Got to number 11 in the UK, which in itself sounds decent, but the previous two albums went to number 1. According to the AllMusic review of this, it didn't do very well in the US, in part possibly because his record company didn't really promote the album. The record company was too busy selling his recording contract to another label at the time that this came out. So that could have halted things slightly. Interesting to know. But where I really heard any of this album for the first time was probably my first encounter with Bryan Adams when I was pretty young. He was one of the first artists that I listened to, Bryan Adams, and that was through this compilations, Bryan Adams, The Best of Me. There's certainly a recency bias with this, which what I mean by that is there's quite a bit of material on this from the last two albums when this came out. So this was released in 99, I thought it was early 2000s, but close enough. And there's a few tracks from On a Day Like Today on it, so you've got Inside Out, When You're Gone, and Cloud Number 9 from this. There's a couple of tracks from the previous album as well, 18 Till I Die, Let's Make a Night to Remember, Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman, The Only Thing That Looks Good on Me Is You. So there's a few tracks on this from those previous albums, so I knew those from here, but the rest of the album I didn't know. And it was quite pleasant actually when I went to listen to this for the first time a few years ago. It took me a few listens, but I enjoyed it, and it's one of those albums that although it's not a favourite album of mine, it's not in that behemoth going, yeah, this is a 5-star album altogether, which I have to say, this album is. No question about it. Bryan Adams' Reckless from 1984. This almost plays like a greatest hits album. I am often contrarian with these things of saying, well, On a Day Like Today, is it as good as Reckless? But no, this album is the best Bryan Adams album. It's all killer from start to end. On a Day Like Today, it's good from start to end, but does it have that same star quality as Reckless? No, I don't think it is, but I like everything that's here. I had a good time with it when I listened to it on Friday. I could sing along to everything that was on the album and just had a really good time. I think that possibly track placing is another thing here which keeps the momentum going. That's something that I don't think 18 Till I Die has that much. It has a few really good tracks, but even when you consider that some albums are front-loaded and they go away towards the end, The Only Thing That Looks Good on Me Is You is a good track on 18 Till I Die, but Do To You I'm not that mad about. Let's Make a Night to Remember is great. 18 Till I Die is okay, but then Star, We're Gonna Win, I Think About You, It Ain't a Party If You Can't Come Round. They're pretty sort of generic tracks, and I think Bryan Adams needed a change. The last two albums, I think Waking Up the Neighbours, Mutt Lange, or Lang, Robert Mutt Lang, producing both of those. This was pretty much a self-produced effort with a few co-producers in there as well. So I think that change in sound helps the track placing as well. It's a nice track placing. It's an album that, as I've said before, is nearly an hour, but doesn't feel like it outstays its welcome, whereas 18 Till I Die feels like it's going on a bit, and Waking Up the Neighbours certainly feels like it is going on a bit, but it doesn't outstay its welcome at all. Interestingly, the singles from this come in the middle of the album, so maybe that helps things out a little bit, that the album has some time to flesh out at the start, then you've got the singles in the middle. But this album, as I'll talk about when we go into the individual tracks, has got a really good end to the album as well. And I think that's key to have a good album, rather than having something front-loaded, and then as you come towards the end, the quality is quite poor. I have to credit Bryan Adams here for having 14 solid tracks on this album. Again, if it was 8 or 9 tracks, Reckless is 10 tracks and they're all really solid. When you listen to some of the bonus tracks from Reckless, you think, yeah, if some of these were put onto the record, it would, although they're good songs, it would dilute the quality of that record. That's something that I don't think happens with On a Day Like Today. Of course, not everything's brilliant and not everything's great, and there are some weaker moments in this, but overall, it's a good album. So let's get into On a Day Like Today. So it starts with a song called How Do You Feel Tonight? Slowish start, builds up, and then the guitars kick in, so really good with that. Great guitar sound as well, overall on this album. Track number 2 is Come On, Come On, Come On. Similar to the first track, that it starts quite slowly and then gets going nicely. 2 good songs to open up the album, and a lot of these songs really weren't played live past around 2001, so you got the tour for this album, and then after that they weren't played all that much, which is a real shame, but there are a couple of live tracks I'll touch on in a little bit. Track 3, Getaway, and actually track 5, Fearless, have got both same sort of qualities to them, and they're more melodic, and I would say probably quite single-worthy actually. And as I talked about before, the album tracks such as these, Getaway and Fearless, are better, more quality to them, more solid than the previous album. I'm going to be critical on the 4th track, On a Day Like Today, the title track. It's probably my least favourite on the album. That's not to say it's bad, but I don't really think it necessarily goes... I wouldn't say it doesn't go anywhere, but it kind of lingers on a little bit. It follows the first 2 tracks that, again, it starts quite slowly, and I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that. It's not almost like, right, come on, get on with it. But I don't think this one quite goes as far or goes anywhere like those first 2 tracks do. I don't think it's certainly as memorable as those first 2 tracks. But again, it's an okay song. Great chorus on Fearless, track number 5. Track number 6, it's got a great hook to it, great chorus to it. Track number 7, Cloud Number 9, adds to the kind of whimsical, joyful feel of the album. I think that's why this is such a nice album to listen to, whereas on 18 Till I Die, is more of a kind of party atmosphere. This is, I guess, more of a, not a teenage album, more of a young adult album, more steeped in, dare I say, adult contemporary and easy listening themes and starting a relationship rather than partying. So I think it does make for a more pleasurable listen, depending on the circumstances that you're listening to this album in, right? I mean, 18 Till I Die, there's some great tracks to play really loud on that album, and the same with Waking Up the Neighbours, really good anthems. But on this one, this is more solid. None of the tracks, apart from a couple, are really wow tracks, but as an offering, it's a really nice, solid offering. But Cloud Number 9, it is one that I'd heard quite a lot, so I could say I've been overexposed to it to a degree over time, but it does add to that joyful feel to the album. It's almost like Getaway in the lyrical vibe it's got, but it's more than okay. It's absolutely fine, is that track. We then have a duet with Mel C, which I don't think I'd have put Bryan Adams and one of the Spice Girls together, but you know what, it works pretty well. This is very much single-like, sounds like it could be in the charts, and I think this was the most successful track from On a Day Like Today, but it works. It really does work, even though I've heard it a lot, and I think that's the quality of a good song. If I've heard it a lot and I'm starting to get a bit sick of it, then that's not great, but there are great tracks that I've heard a lot and don't have to hear again, so that's not necessarily true all the time, but I still enjoy listening to this, and it's got a great guitar solo on this as well. So a good duet, it's it's not quite It's Only Love from Reckless to take another duet, but I think that the choice of Mel C is quite wise. Needed more of a youthful voice. It sounds better for the radio with that youthful voice. She's not quite Tina Turner, but I don't think Tina or somebody like that would have necessarily worked on this album, or at least this song. Inside Out was another single from this album, track 9. That again plays to the themes of this album. It's a really nice song. And track 10, If I Had You, actually it's interesting to see with the track listing here that there's 2 ballady, slower type tracks back to back, where you hadn't got that previously in the album. So that's the first time this happens, but I'm okay with that because the momentum really comes back after that. Feels like maybe Bryan thought that there was a bit of a statement to make after that. Dare I say, lull in the album. I don't think it's a lull in terms of my enjoyment, but somebody could be turned off by that, and things definitely come back together towards the end of the album. But good song, good vocal, and again, a good chorus, some really good hooks. I think that's something that Bryan Adams is almost sneered at by some, and I don't particularly know why. He's got a really good eye for a great chorus, a real catchy song. But I think this proves that he could do something a little bit different this album to what had come, at least the last few albums anyway, with the likes of Reckless and Waking Up the Neighbours. They're more anthemic albums, but this shows that he can do this shows he can do something a little bit different, which is a nice thing to have in Bryan Adams' collection, certainly. But things really start to improve from a rock-centric point of view with the next 2 tracks. Real good rock standout tracks, Before the Night Is Over and I Don't Want to Live Forever. And the versions on this album are great, but I'd recommend you go and listen to the albums live, the versions of this live from the Budokan in Japan. Really good rocking versions. In fact, they're even heavier, particularly I Don't Want to Live Forever. He's a little bit heavier and almost juvenile on that album live at the Budokan. But I think that like these 2, and this is a comparison I've only really made by listening to the album again today, because I thought, well, I Don't Want to Live Forever almost makes a real crunching statement like Kids Wanna Rock on Reckless. And I thought, well, these maybe go hand in hand, because Before the Night Is Over, certainly from a lyrical point of view, is quite akin from Run to You, from Reckless once again. That forbidden relationship, doing something wrong, and it's pretty explicit what's going on in Before the Night Is Over. But these are good, a little bit going back towards on 18 Till I Die and the albums before that. Fun songs, really good rock songs, and these I think are the standouts of this album, and 2 songs that I don't think are mentioned at all when it comes to Bryan Adams. So if I was to do anything about underrated Bryan Adams songs, these 2 would definitely come in. But things then towards the end of the album take a nice, more tranquil feeling on the beautifully gentle track Where Angels Fear to Tread. Really sweet, gentle, slower song to finish off the album. And then on the European, Australian and South American versions of this album, there's a bonus track called Lie to Me, which again is another solid track with a good hook to finish off the album. I think it would have been better possibly, and I think that was maybe what was intended for Where Angels Fear to Tread to finish off the album, because of the way it's a little bit more tranquil and gentle to finish things off as a statement to finish off the album. But Lie to Me is absolutely fine. So you can probably tell from that I'm not criticising any of these tracks at all, really. It's probably only On a Day Like Today, the title track, that I'm not all that bothered about, but all of these are in my Bryan Adams playlist, and it's one I haven't revisited for a little while, so really nice to go and revisit this. Listened to it quite a few times over the last couple of days, and I think probably the highlights from this album are those 2 tracks that I've mentioned. The first 2 are pretty good, you know. The first song, How Do You Feel Tonight, I like that one, as well as Come On, Come On, Come On. Getaway's good. When You're Gone is good. To go with the singles, I think When You're Gone is the best of the singles, and Where Angels Fear to Tread is a beautiful, slower song. A little bit like Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman from the previous album. But this one is one that I enjoy. I would place it higher than this, I think, on a Bryan Adams ranking. Going back to the start of the video as well, obviously this was potentially going to be a You Want It, You Got It video, and that might well come in the future. I think I want to talk about this in a little bit more depth. But actually at the moment, as a cohesive album effort, I'd put this above You Want It, You Got It as well, which actually before this exercise, I don't think I'd have done. I held this in a little bit of a higher regard to when I'd listened to it a few nights ago, so might just need a bit more time with this album. It's the first half of this which is a little bit sluggish for me, before the second half of this album is a good listen. But this, it's not flashy, there's none of that, it's just a really solid album. I think that's nice not to have any of the massive hits. and just be a solid album in its own right. Not be overplayed, apart from possibly a couple of the tracks, but because there's 14 tracks here, there's plenty of time for this album to flesh out and not feel samey, but it's a good time. And to be honest, even though I've heard it today once, I could easily go and play it again. So let me know what you think of On a Day Like Today down in the comments. Is it one that you've heard from Bryan Adams before? Is it one you've never heard? Well, hopefully, if you haven't heard it, then this will give you the inspiration to possibly go and listen to Bryan Adams. If you are listening to it for the first time, then you're not going to expect something like this or something like Waking Up the Neighbours. It is a little bit different, but I think as Bryan started to go into the new millennium, he's done some good albums in the last 20, 30 years, although I'm not familiar with some of the later albums that Bryan Adams has done. But he's a really good musician. I've seen him live twice. Great live show on the 2 times I've seen him, and he's still going strong despite being in his mid-60s. So kudos to you, Bryan, for still making good music. But let me know what you think of this album down in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe. All that good stuff that really helps us get found in the algorithm. And as well as on YouTube, we're also available as a podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, generally wherever you get your podcasts if you want to listen to this in audio form. But thank you for being with me today. Go and enjoy the music of Bryan Adams. I hope this has inspired you to go and do that, and hopefully there's a video up there that you might enjoy to go and watch next.